Hello, friends. Night has already fallen, and the day was long and tiring. And now, it is time to rest. As always, I will tell you a kind legend that once took place in our beloved Middle-earth. So, settle in comfortably, gently close your eyes, and let our journey begin. In the fading years of the First Age, when Morgoth's darkness yet ruled most of Beleriand, the land was scarred by war and sorrow. The great realms of the elves had fallen one by one, and the proud houses of men were scattered like leaves before a storm. Among these remnants wandered a young man named Arthendir, the last son of a broken line, of the house of Beor, whose faithfulness once won the friendship of Finrod Felagund, long ago in brighter days. Arthendir's people dwelt now in hiding, far to the south of Dorthonion, in the wooded hills beyond Tarn Eluin. The waters of that lake still whispered the memory of Barahir's stand, though his men were long slain, and only legends remained. In the ruined shelter of stone and briar, Arthendir kept watch over his kin, women, children, and a few hardened warriors, all fugitives from Morgoth's iron hand. The nights were cold and perilous. Wolves prowled the dark, and the faintest glimmer of firelight could draw death upon them. Yet Arthendir dared not abandon the old place entirely, for beneath the cracked stones of Barahir's refuge lay secrets of their house. His father had told him once that treasures of oath and memory were hidden there, things that bound them still to the elves of the old. One night, when the moon hung pale over the lake and frost glittered upon the reeds, Arthendir entered the cavern that had once been Barahir's hold. He carried only a small lamp, its flame guarded by a trembling hand. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of decay and age. He searched among the stones, pulling aside moss and roots until his fingers brushed something hard, a small chest, bound in iron and sealed with the mark of Finrod's house. It took him hours to break it open, for the lock was corroded and the hinges stiff. Inside lay a single object wrapped in faded cloth, a silver ring, shaped like two serpents with emerald eyes, their jaws holding a crown of golden flowers. Arthendir caught his breath. He knew this ring. Every child of Beor's house knew it by song and story. It was the Ring of Barahir, the token given by Finrod himself in ages past as pledge of friendship between elf and man. But how had it come here again, when it was said to have been borne to Nargothrond with Beren, son of Barahir, and thence to Doriath, to Luthien the Fair? Legends told that the ring had passed to their son Dior, and was lost when Doriath fell. Yet here it lay, gleaming faintly in the lamplight, a thing of wonder and dread. He took it in his hand, feeling its weight, and the chill of it seemed to seep into his very bones. As he turned it over, he thought he heard a whisper, faint, distant, like the echo of an oath long forgotten. By this bond, the faith of the Eldar and the Edain shall not fail. He started and looked around, but there was no one in the cavern save him. The lamp flickered low, casting long shadows across the walls. That night, Arthendir couldn't sleep. He sat beside the dying fire, staring at the ring. His thoughts were troubled. What did it mean that this token had returned? Was it a sign? A calling? Or was it a lure sent by dark powers to draw him into doom? At dawn, as mist rose from the lake, he showed the ring to Borlas, the eldest of his company, a weathered man whose beard was white as ash. Borlas gazed upon it long in silence. "By the stars," he murmured at last, "I thought never to see that ring again. It was lost when Doriath burned. How it has come back to us I cannot guess, unless by the will of the Valar themselves." Arthendir asked, Then what shall we do with it? Borlas frowned. Such a token brings both honor and peril. Morgoth's spies know its shape. If they learn that one of Barahir's blood yet lives and bears it, they will hunt us without rest. Then perhaps, said Arthendir, it should be hidden once more. Borlas shook his head. Nay, lad. Hidden things are often found by dark hands. Better to carry it to those who may guard it, to the elves of the havens, perhaps, or to what remains of the house of Finarfin. They will know its worth. Arthendir looked westward, where the mists of the Syrian Vale lay beyond the horizon. It was said that many refugees had gathered there, elves of Doriath and Gondolin, men of the Edain, and even the survivors of Nargothrond. Yet the journey was perilous, between ley forests haunted by spiders, lands claimed by orcs, and the spies of Morgoth everywhere. Still, something stirred within him, a whisper of duty and of pride long buried. If this ring is truly the blood mark of our house, he said, then I will bear it. I will take it west to the havens, and whatever fate awaits me, I shall meet it as my fathers did, sword in hand. Borlas laid a hand on his shoulder. So be it, but you will not go alone. Thus began the journey that would change the fate of the last of Barahir's line. Before the next moon had waned, Arthendir gathered his small company, a handful of weary souls bound by hope and memory. Among them was Lineth, an elf maid of Doriath, fair and silent, who had once defied Thingol's laws to aid men in secret. She came now seeking redemption, and when her eyes fell upon the ring, a shadow of recognition passed over her face. It should not be in mortal hands, she whispered, and yet perhaps it was meant to be so. The blood of the ancestors still flows in you, Arthendir. May it be enough. Then they turned their faces to the west, leaving the cold hills of Tarn Eluin behind. None of them knew what awaited, only that the ring shone faintly beneath Arthendir's cloak, as if its light had been waiting through long ages to awaken once more. And in the north, in the dark pits of Angband, a whisper ran among Morgoth's servants. The blood of Beor still walks the earth. The wind that came down from the north was bitter and sharp, carrying with it the scent of ash from far-off battles and the faint wail of wolves. Arthendir drew his cloak tighter as he led his small band through the twisted forests south of Dorthonion. The land here was half dead. Trees stood blackened by fire, and the rivers ran sluggish and grey beneath a sky that seldom showed the sun. There were 7 of them in all: Arthendir, Borlas, and Lineth, with 4 others, men of mixed blood who had survived the ruin of Beor's folk. They moved by night, resting by day beneath thickets or in hollowed stones, for the eyes of Morgoth were ever abroad. Orc patrols ranged these lands, and worse things still, shadows that whispered in tongues of malice and beasts warped by darkness. Lineth walked silently beside Arthendir, her hood drawn low. The faint silver gleam of her hair caught what little moonlight there was. She was fair, yet her gaze was distant, filled with a sorrow that seemed too old for any mortal to bear. When she spoke, her voice was soft and clear as running water. "This land was once fair," she said one night, as they rested by a ruined fountain, overgrown with ivy. "In my youth, I walked here beneath the stars and heard the songs of nightingales, but now only the cries of beasts remain." Arthendir looked upon her with wonder. "You knew these woods before the wars?" "Aye," she said, "before Thingol's pride brought ruin upon Doriath. I was young when Luthien still sang in the courts beneath Menegroth's halls. When the girdle fell and the enemy came, I fled with others toward the south. Since then, I have wandered, seeking to atone for the oath I broke." "What oath?" Arthendir asked gently. "I swore never to aid the race of men again," she said, her eyes shadowed. "Yet here I stand, walking beside the heir of Beor. Perhaps the doom of my kind is to love too deeply what we are forbidden." Borlas, who was sharpening his sword nearby, gave a dry chuckle. "And perhaps the doom of men is to trust too easily what they should fear. But your skill with the bow has saved us twice, Lady Elf. Oaths or not, I am glad of your company." That night, as the company slept, Arthendir sat apart, turning the ring of Barahir in his fingers. Its green eyes glinted faintly in the firelight. He thought of his father, and of the long line of warriors who had carried the name of Beor with honor. Yet he also thought of the burden it carried, the oath between elf and man, the promise that had bound their fates together, even unto death. He could not shake the feeling that unseen eyes were upon him. Twice already they had found tracks upon the path, not of orcs, but of men, light-footed and cunning. Spies, perhaps, in service to the enemy. Before dawn they moved again, westward toward the Vale of Sirion. The journey grew harder with every league. The mountains loomed dark upon the horizon, and the forests grew dense with webs and creeping fog. Once they passed near Nandungotheb, the valley of dreadful death, where the spawn of Ungoliant wove their nets across the trees. Even the air there was foul. They dared not linger. It was on the third night that they heard the horns. Faint at first, then closer, the harsh bray of orcish calls echoing across the glens. Their pursuers had found them. "Run!" Borlas hissed. "They are close behind." They fled through the tangled undergrowth, their breath coming in gasps, their boots slipping on damp leaves. Arrows hissed through the dark, striking trees with dull thuds. One of the men, Talon, fell with a cry, and Lineth turned swiftly, loosing her bow. Her arrow struck an orc through the throat. But more came, a swarm of black shapes moving swift as shadows. "South!" Arthendir shouted. "To the river!" They burst from the forest into a clearing where moonlight spilled pale upon the stones of an ancient ruin. Broken pillars jutted from the earth, and at its heart stood a crumbling statue of a woman, her face worn smooth by time. It was all that remained of an elven watchtower from the days before Morgoth's dominion. There, cornered and weary, they made their stand. Borlas and Arthendir fought shoulder to shoulder, blades flashing in the moonlight. Lineth's arrows sang through the air, each one finding its mark. Yet the orcs were many. Talon lay still, and another of their number fell beneath the claws of a great Uruk, bearing the mark of the Iron Crown. Then, out of the darkness, a voice called in the tongue of men, cold and commanding. "Hold your blades! Do not slay him!" The orcs halted, snarling. From among them stepped a tall man, clad in black, his face hidden beneath a hood. His voice carried both authority and deceit, smooth as silk yet edged with malice. "Arthendir, son of the house of Beor," he said, "you carry that which belongs to me." Arthendir raised his sword, his heart pounding. "I know you not." "You will," the man replied, "for I am Gorhir, and long have I sought the ring that binds the blood of elves and men. Give it to me, and your deaths shall be swift. Resist, and I will take it from your corpses." Borlas spat. "You speak fair for a servant of Morgoth." Gorhir laughed, a low, chilling sound. "I serve none but power itself. The Dark Lord has grown weary, his time ending. When the West rises against him, I shall stand in his place. The ring is mine by right, for it bears the mark of those who betrayed their kin, and I too was once betrayed. His words struck Arthendir like a blow. He saw now that there was something unearthly about the man. A pale light glimmered beneath his skin, and his shadow fell too long upon the ground. He was no mortal man, but something older and darker, a Maya perhaps, who had turned to evil long ago. Before Gawrhyr could speak again, Lineth raised her bow. "Go back to the pit that spawned you," she cried, and loosed an arrow straight toward his heart. The shaft struck true, yet it shattered as it touched him, bursting into sparks. Gawrhyr laughed again, and with a gesture of his hand, the ground beneath them trembled. The ruins cracked, and a wave of darkness swept outward. The orcs surged forward at his command. "Fall back!" Arthendir shouted. "To the river!" They fled once more, leaving the ruin behind. The sound of pursuit followed them like thunder. But the river was near. They could hear its roar ahead. Bursting through the trees, they found themselves upon a high bank, overlooking a swift, cold torrent below. "There is no bridge!" cried Lineth. "Then we jump," said Arthendir, and without another word he leapt, plunging into the icy waters. One by one the others followed. The current seized them, dragging them downstream through darkness and foam. Arrows hissed overhead, and the cries of the orcs faded behind them. When at last they were swept into a quiet bend of the river, they crawled ashore, shivering and half-drowned, but alive. Borlas coughed, shaking the water from his beard. "We cannot outrun that one forever," he said grimly. "No," Arthendir agreed, clutching the ring beneath his cloak. "But we can outwit him." And in the distance, across the black waters, the laughter of Gawrhyr echoed faintly, a promise that the hunt was far from over. The company rested upon the southern bank of the river, hidden beneath a tangle of reeds and willow branches. Dawn had not yet broken, but the eastern sky held a faint pallor, a promise of light. The cold had sunk deep into their bones, and none spoke for a long while. Only the sound of the river murmured around them, as if whispering secrets older than any living tongue. Arthendir sat apart, wringing the water from his cloak, his thoughts dark. The face of Gawrhyr lingered before his eyes. That cold, proud expression, the voice that rang with unnatural power. It was no mere mortal enemy who hunted them now. Whatever Gawrhyr truly was, his claim of betrayal and ancient wrath marked him as something that had walked Arda long before the first sunrise. Lineth came quietly to his side. Her hair, wet and tangled, clung to her face, and her grey eyes were shadowed with weariness. "He will not give up the chase," she said softly. "You have seen his kind before." "I have not," Arthendir replied. "But my father once told tales of the fallen Maya, spirits who served the Valar in the beginning, and later turned to serve the dark. Perhaps he is one such, yet I do not understand why he desires the ring." Lineth's gaze turned to the river. The ring is more than a token. It was blessed by Finrod himself, who swore an oath of friendship sealed by the Valar's grace. Even now, a trace of that power clings to it. To one corrupted, such a thing might be a weapon, or a key. Arthendir looked down at the ring, glimmering faintly against his palm. "A key to what?" "To the hearts of men," she answered, "and perhaps even to the grace that once bound our two kindreds. There is strength in oaths, Arthendir, strength that even the enemy fears. That is why he sent his servant to claim it. Borlas, who had been tending to the wounded, joined them then. His face was grim. 2 gone, he said. Talon and Edric. The rest bear wounds but will live. We cannot linger here. The orcs will soon find our trail again." Arthendir nodded. "We go west. The Syrian Vale lies beyond the hills. If fortune favors us, we may yet reach the havens." "And if it does not?" Borlas asked. "Then we will die as our fathers did, defying the shadow." So they rose once more and took to the wilds, keeping close to the river as it wound south and west. The days that followed were cruel. Rain fell often, and the land grew treacherous, thick with marshes and deep woods where even the birds dared not sing. Yet in those days of toil and fear, a strange bond grew among them, between men and elf, born of shared danger and of hope that clung to them like a faint light amid the gloom. At times, Arthendir thought he felt unseen guidance. Once, when they lost their way in a maze of hills, a single white stag crossed their path and led them to a stream that ran westward. Lineth bowed her head as it passed, whispering, "The hand of Yavanna still guards us." Borlas, ever doubtful, muttered that luck was luck, and nothing more. But even he crossed himself in silence. Yet their rest was brief. On the fourth night after the river crossing, as they camped beneath a thicket of thorn, they heard again the cry of a horn, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Gorhir's hunt had resumed. They broke camp at once, moving swiftly under starlight. The land rose into low hills clothed with heather and stone. The wind howled over them, carrying the smell of burning from somewhere to the north. Smoke stained the horizon, a village of men, perhaps, fallen to the orcs. Near midnight they came upon an ancient causeway, broken and overgrown. At its end stood a tower of white stone, crumbling yet proud, built long ago by the elves of Osiriand as a watch upon the plains. Lineth halted, gazing up at it. "This place was once called Tirialonda," she said. "A watchtower of the green elves. Few now remember it." "It may serve us yet," Borlas said, scanning the hills. "We could rest within, out of the wind." They entered the tower through a narrow archway. Inside, dust and silence lay thick upon the stones. Fragments of old carvings marked the walls. Leaves, stars, and flowing script that spoke of peace long forgotten. Arthendir set his torch upon a ledge and explored the lower chambers. There they found an old well, still deep with water, and a narrow stair that led upward into darkness. It was Lineth who climbed first, her steps light and sure. At the tower's summit, she gave a low cry. When Arthendir joined her, he saw the world spread wide before them, the glimmer of distant rivers, the pale gleam of starlight upon far-off woods. And there, faint upon the western horizon, a silvery glow shimmered, like moonlight upon the sea. "The havens," Lineth whispered. "We are not so far as I feared." But Arthendir's gaze turned northward, and his heart sank. Across the dark hills moved a glimmer of fire. Many fires, spreading like a serpent's trail. The hunt had found them once again. "Down," he said. "We cannot stay." They descended swiftly, but before they reached the tower's base, a wind swept through the ruin. Sudden and fierce, like a storm-given voice. The torches guttered and went out. From the shadows below came a low, mocking laugh. "You run well, son of Beor," said Gaurhir's voice, echoing up the stair. "But all roads in this land end at my feet." Arthendir drew his sword, the steel catching what faint light remained. "So be it. Let it end here, then." Borlas took his place beside him, grim and silent, while Lineth stood at their rear, her bow drawn. The air grew heavy, and the shadows deepened until they seemed alive. Then Gaurhir stepped into the light, tall, robed in black, his eyes burning with a cold flame. The air around him shimmered as though the world itself bent to his will. "You carry something that does not belong to you," he said, his voice soft as silk, yet filled with menace. That ring is the last thread binding the treacherous Eldar to their mortal pets. Give it to me, and I will spare you." Arthendir held the ring high. This was given in friendship, sealed by oath and blood. It belongs neither to you nor to Morgoth. Gaurhir's expression hardened. "Then you will die as they did, all who placed faith in friendship between light and darkness." With a gesture of his hand, he struck. A wave of force crashed through the air, shattering stone. The tower trembled. Arthendir was thrown to the ground, the ring torn from his grasp. Gaurhir reached for it, his hand outstretched. But before his fingers closed upon it, Lineth's voice rang out in the ancient tongue of the Eldar. A flash of white light burst from her hand, and the ring flew back to Arthendir's breast. The tower groaned, stone splitting as if struck by thunder. Gaurhir staggered, his form wavering, and for a heartbeat his face changed. The mask of a man fell away, revealing a shape of flame and shadow, terrible to behold. "Run!" Lineth cried. They fled through the collapsing halls, the roar of ruin behind them. Stones fell like rain, and dust filled the air. When they burst into the night, the tower was aflame from within, a pillar of white fire against the dark sky. Gaurhir's scream echoed across the hills, not of defeat, but of wrath unquenched. "He lives," Lineth said, trembling. "His form may fade, but his spirit will not rest until he has the ring." Arthendir closed his hand around the silver band, feeling its cold weight once more. "Then we must reach the havens before he rises again," he said. "For only there, perhaps, can this oath be renewed and the blood of our ancestors redeemed." And so, with the tower burning behind them and the shadow still pursuing, they turned west again, toward the faint, distant light that promised both hope and doom. The morning after the fall of Tirialonda dawned grey and cold. Ash from the ruined tower drifted upon the wind, and far behind them, faint as a memory, the last embers glowed like dying stars. Arthendir did not look back. His eyes were fixed upon the west, where pale light struggled through the clouds, and the faint shimmer of distant waters marked their path toward the havens. They marched in silence through the broken lands of Osiriand, once fair with singing streams and green hills, now scarred by fire and fear. The forests had thinned, the great beeches and oaks of old lay fallen, their roots blackened by flame. Here and there they found the bones of old battles, rusted mail, shattered spears, and the white skulls of men and orcs alike. Lineth moved quietly beside Arthendir, her hood drawn, her eyes ever watchful. Though weary, she seemed tireless, guiding them along secret paths that only the Eldar remembered. When the sun was high, she led them to a hollow beneath an ancient elm, where they rested and shared what little food remained. Borlas sat, sharpening his blade upon a flat stone. "That creature will not rest long," he said darkly. "I've fought many foes, but none that bled smoke when struck. What manner of being was that?" "A Maya," Lineth said softly, "once a servant of the Vala, twisted by his own pride and envy. Some of Morgoth's mightiest servants began as such, yet Gaurhir is strange even among them. His name is not recorded in any of the lays I know." "Then he must have hidden long," Arthendir murmured, waiting for this chance. "Perhaps," she said. "But know this, son of Beor, even the greatest of the fallen cannot wholly master the light that once dwelt in them. You saw how he faltered when the tower burned. Fire is both his bane and his birthright." Borlas grunted. "If fire be his bane, I'll gladly give him plenty of it next time he shows his face." They rested only a little before moving on. Each day brought new hardship. Rain fell for 2 nights straight, turning the roads to rivers of mud. one of the younger men, Farron, fell ill with fever, and they were forced to carry him upon a makeshift litter. Still they pressed forward, driven by the knowledge that their pursuer was not of flesh alone. At dusk upon the 5th day, they came to a deep valley through which the Syrians' tributaries ran bright and clear. For the first time in many weeks, the air smelled of growing things. Wildflowers clung to the banks, and the sound of rushing water brought peace to their hearts. "This place is untouched," Lineth said, kneeling beside the stream. "Perhaps Ulmo's hand guards it still." Arthandir bent to drink, the cold water washing away some of his weariness. "Then we may rest here tonight." They built a small fire beneath the shelter of a willow grove, careful to keep the smoke low. As night fell, Lineth sang softly in the tongue of her people, a song of starlight and remembrance. Her voice wove through the air like silver threads, and for a moment it seemed to Arthandir that the shadows themselves grew gentler. Borlas smiled faintly as he leaned against a tree. "I'd near forgotten what peace felt like," he said. "Let us hope it lasts till morning." But peace was fleeting in those dark days. In the deepest hour of night, Arthandir woke suddenly, his heart pounding. The fire had burned low, and all lay still save the river. Yet something moved among the trees, faint footsteps, soft as breath. He rose silently, drawing his sword, and stepped beyond the circle of the firelight. At first he saw nothing. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, not an orc, but a man, clad in dark leathers, his face half hidden by a scarf. The stranger held up an empty hand. "Peace," he whispered. "I mean no harm." Arthandir's grip tightened. "Then name yourself." "I am Radruin, once of the northern lands," the man replied. "I saw your fire and came seeking company. The wild is not kind to the lone." Borlas stirred behind them, hand on his sword. "Lone travelers do not find their way so deep into this valley without purpose. Speak plain." Radruin hesitated, then said, "I flee the same shadow you do. A black sorcerer hunts these woods, and his beasts scour the hills. Many of my kin are dead. I followed your trail, hoping for aid." Lineth stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "If you flee him, then you have brought his scent upon you." Radruin lowered his gaze. "If that is so, I will leave. But I swear by my father's blood, I mean no treachery." Something in his voice stirred pity in Arthandir's heart. "Let him stay till dawn," he said at last. "We will judge him by his deeds, not his words." Borlas grumbled but said no more. They allowed Radruin to sit near the fire, though none truly slept again that night. When morning came, the stranger helped gather water and wood without complaint. His skill with the blade was plain. He moved with the surety of a seasoned fighter. Over the next 2 days, he proved his worth, guiding them through narrow ravines and warning of hidden snares left by orcs. Yet Lineth's unease didn't fade. One night, as the others slept, she spoke quietly to Arthandir. "There is something veiled in him," she said. "His words are too careful. His silence is too heavy." Arthandir frowned. "You think him a spy?" "I do not know, but his heart is clouded. Beware." Arthandir nodded, though part of him resisted her warning. Radruin had risked his life beside them more than once. Trust was scarce in these days, yet it was all that held them together. Their path soon led them into the foothills of Taur-on-Faroth, where the great forests of Braethil once stood. The air grew warmer, and far off they heard the cry of gulls, a sound few mortals had heard and lived to tell. Hope stirred among them. Then, on the 7th day, disaster struck. They had camped within a hollow near sunset, unaware that their trail had been marked. without warning, arrows hissed from the trees. One struck Faran in the throat, another grazed Arthendir's arm. Orcs poured from the shadows, snarling and shrieking. "Up! Defend the camp!" Borlas roared. The battle was swift and brutal. Arthendir fought fiercely, his blade singing, but the enemy came in waves. Lineth's arrows fell true, yet for each orc slain, 2 more took its place. Then, amid the chaos, Radruin turned. His face was cold, his eyes gleaming with strange light. In his hand, he held not a sword, but a black dagger that seemed to drink the very firelight. Borlas saw it first. "Traitor!" he shouted. But too late. Radruin struck him down with a blow swift as lightning. The world seemed to stop. Arthendir stared, disbelieving, as Radruin straightened and cast back his hood. The shadows clung to his face. Not the face of a man, but one that shifted and flickered like smoke. Gaurhir's voice issued from his lips. "Did you think I would chase you on weary feet, little heir of Beor? My spirit walks where I will. And now, your journey ends." Arthendir charged with a cry of rage. Their blades met, light against darkness, and for a heartbeat the forest blazed with fire. But Gaurhir laughed, hurling Arthendir aside with a gesture. Lineth loosed her last arrow, striking him through the heart. Yet again he didn't fall. "Fools!" the shadow sneered. "You cannot kill what is deathless." But even as he spoke, Borlas, broken, bleeding, seized a burning branch from the fire and drove it into the false man's chest. The scream that followed tore the night asunder. Fire burst forth, devouring flesh and shadow alike. When it faded, Radruin's body lay still, empty, lifeless. The forest was silent once more. Borlas fell to his knees, his breath ragged. "He's gone. For now." Arthendir knelt beside him, tears stinging his eyes. "Rest, old friend. You have saved us all." Borlas smiled faintly. "Aye, but the fire will rise again." And with that, his eyes closed forever. Lineth laid her hand upon his brow and whispered a prayer in Elvish. Then she looked to Arthendir, her face pale and set. "We must move quickly. His spirit may return, and if it does, no flame will hold him again." Arthendir rose, the ring heavy upon his breast. "Then we go west. Whatever awaits us there, we go." And with the dawn, weary and wounded, they set out once more, leaving behind the ashes of both friend and foe, and the promise that the blood of the ancestors had not yet run dry. The wind off the western sea carried the scent of salt and the cry of distant gulls. It stirred the grey cloaks of the travellers as they trudged onward, their hearts heavy with loss. Behind them lay the burnt hollow where Borlas had fallen, his courage sealing their survival. Before them stretched the last leagues of Beleriand, wild and perilous still. For days they followed the course of the Sirion, now broad and gleaming like a path of silver beneath the pale sun. Its waters had been witness to countless sorrows, of elves fleeing ruin, of men dying in exile, and now it guided the last of Beor's line toward the sea. Arthendir walked at its edge, his arm bound where the blade of Radruin had grazed him. The wound stung, though more from memory than pain. He could still see Borlas's final smile, the firelight fading in his eyes. Lineth walked beside him, silent and thoughtful. Since the battle she had spoken little. Grief lay upon her like frost upon leaves, but her step was steady. When Arthendir faltered, she steadied him with a word or touch, her quiet strength a beacon in the dark. They were 3 now, the last 2 men and Lineth the elf. The other survivors of their company had scattered in the confusion after the fight, and though Arthendir searched for them in vain, no trace remained. Whether they lived or perished, he could not tell. Yet the journey must go on, for Garhir's shadow would not rest. The days grew warmer as they descended into the Syrian Vale. The land softened, grass returned, and the air was sweet with the scent of thyme and heather. Birds sang once more, and in the distance they glimpsed the shimmer of white towers. The sight stirred hope in Arthendir's heart. "The havens," Lineth said quietly. Eglarist and Brithambar are gone, drowned and silent, but the mouths of Sirion remain. There elves and Eden dwell together still. If we reach them, we may find both safety and counsel. Arthendir nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. And if Garhir's spirit follows us there? Then perhaps others will stand beside us, she answered. For I feel the sea's strength near. Its voice drowns even the echoes of Morgoth's malice. That night, they camped upon a hill overlooking the river's wide bend. The moon was high, and its light silvered the grass and water alike. Arthendir could not sleep. The ring lay upon his chest, its serpent eyes gleaming faintly as though awake. He turned it in his fingers, feeling again the pull of unseen will. He thought of his ancestors, Barahir, Beren, Dior, and of the long chain of oaths and blood that had bound their line to the fate of Middle-earth. The blood of the ancestors, he murmured. If I fail, their memory dies with me. Lineth stirred beside the fading fire. You speak as though their spirits depend on your hand alone, she said softly. But remember this, the deeds of the past live not in blood alone, but in the choices of the living. So long as you walk in their honor, their fire burns. Arthendir looked up, meeting her gaze. And if I fall, then the ring will endure. I will bear it, and others after me. That is the way of both elf and man. Death may claim one, but not the light they carried. Her words lingered as he drifted into uneasy sleep. At dawn they resumed their march. The river widened into marshlands, where reeds grew tall and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Twice they saw movement among the rushes, dark shapes that slipped beneath the water without sound. Lineth whispered that these were the watchers of the enemy, remnants of twisted spirits bound to the land itself. They passed swiftly and in silence. By the third day, their food was nearly gone. Hunger gnawed at them, and fatigue weighed heavy. They found a grove of apple trees near the riverbank, bearing fruit, small and sour, yet welcome. As they gathered what they could, a voice hailed them from across the water. "Hoy there, wanderers! Are you friend or foe?" They turned sharply. Upon the far bank stood a group of elves, clad in grey and green, their bows drawn. At their head was a tall elf lord with hair of dark gold and eyes keen as the sea's edge. Lineth stepped forward and raised her hand in greeting. "Friends," she called, "we are travelers seeking the havens of Sirion. I am Lineth of Doriath, and this man bears a token of the house of Finarfin." The elf's gaze fixed upon Arthendir, who slowly drew forth the ring of Barahir. Its silver gleam caught the light, and the elves murmured among themselves. The leader crossed the river in a small boat, swift and silent, and stood before them. "I am Erelor, of the people of Círdan," he said. "Long has it been since one of Barahir's blood walked these shores. Come, you are welcome among us, though the times are perilous." Relief washed through Arthendir. They followed Erelor's company westward, along the river's path, until the air filled with the sound of waves. And at last they saw the havens. White towers rose from the shore, their banners pale in the sea breeze. Ships lay anchored in the harbor, their masts swaying like slender trees. The smell of salt and tar filled the air, mingled with the songs of elves who labored at the docks. It was a haven indeed, a flicker of light amid the gathering dark. Círdan the shipwright himself was not there, for rumor said he had sailed north to aid the host of Valinor in the war that now stirred beyond the horizon. Yet his people welcomed the travelers with honor. Arthendir was given rest in a small hall overlooking the sea, and there he slept for the first time in peace, lulled by the rhythm of the waves. But peace was not to last. On the second night, as the moon climbed high, a storm came from the east. The wind howled through the towers, and the sea rose in fury. Lightning split the clouds, and in its flash, Arthendir saw something terrible. A black shape moving upon the water, vast and formless, its eyes like twin coals. He woke Lineth at once. "He comes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Garhir has found us." The alarm spread swiftly through the havens. Elves armed themselves, and horns sounded upon the walls. From the eastern marshes came a darkness that no storm could birth, a cloud that moved with purpose, writhing with shadow. Within it flickered a figure of flame, tall and terrible, striding across the waters as though upon stone. "Take the ring to the lighthouse," cried Erelor. "There the fire of Ulmo's blessing burns still. It may shield you." Arthendir and Lineth ran through the tempest, lightning flashing about them. The tower rose at the edge of the cliffs, its beacon burning with a blue-white flame that defied the storm. Behind them came the roar of battle, the clash of steel, the cries of elves, and the unholy laughter of Gorhir. At the tower's peak, Arthendir turned to face the storm. The shadow advanced, black wings spreading wide, and from its heart came Garhir's voice. "You cannot flee the oath, son of Beor. It binds us both, and by your death it shall be broken." Arthendir drew his sword, its edge gleaming wet with rain. "Then come, Oathbreaker. Let the blood of the ancestors judge between us." The wind howled, and lightning crowned the sea. As the shadow loomed, Lineth laid her hand upon the ring. Its serpents blazed with emerald fire, bright as the sun through storm clouds. The sea rose behind them, a wall of white fury, and Ulmo's voice seemed to echo in the thunder. Then the wave struck, a surge of water and light that swallowed the darkness whole. For a moment, all was blinding brilliance and silence. When the storm passed, the ring lay upon the tower's stone, gleaming still. The shadow was gone. The sea was calm once more, save for the foam that lapped gently at the shore. And far out upon the western waves, 2 stars shone together, bright and steadfast. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered upon the wind. The waves whispered low against the cliffs, and the air was heavy with the scent of salt and smoke. Dawn crept slowly across the sea, unveiling a world both broken and reborn. The havens still stood, though their walls were scarred and their quays strewn with wreckage. Many had fallen in the night, yet the flame of Ulmo's tower still burned, blue and unwavering, above the waters. Upon the high stair of the lighthouse, Arthendir awoke. He lay among the cold stones, the ring of Borahir clutched tight within his hand. For a long moment he could not move, for his body ached, and his mind swam with the memory of thunder and fire. Then he rose, calling softly into the still air. "Lineth." Only the sea answered. He searched the tower's summit, his heart heavy with dread. The beacon fire blazed beside him, untouched by the storm, and the sea below stretched vast and empty to the west. There was no sign of her, no trace of the bright figure who had stood beside him when the wave rose. He knelt, and upon the stones near the edge he found her cloak, torn and sodden, its silver brooch gleaming faintly in the pale light. Arthendir's throat tightened. He bowed his head, and for a moment grief held him silent. Then he lifted the brooch to his breast and whispered, "You are not gone, fair one. The sea does not devour what the Valar would keep." He remained there until the sun rose high, watching the horizon. Only when Erelor and his elves came upon the tower did he stir. They bore signs of hard battle, cuts upon their arms, soot upon their faces, but their eyes were bright with victory. "Gaurhir's shadow is broken," Erelor said. "When the sea rose, his form was scattered, and the orcs that came with him fled in terror. Whether his spirit perished, none can say, but his power here is ended." Arthendir nodded slowly. "Yet the cost was dear." "Aye," said the elf. "Many of my kin lie beneath the waves, but we live, and the light of the sea endures. Come, our healers wait, and food besides." They led him down from the tower. In the courtyards below, the wounded were tended, and the songs of mourning rose soft and sorrowful. Arthendir listened as he walked, his thoughts distant. The ring felt heavier than ever, its gleam subdued. It seemed to him that it shared in his weariness, as though it too had seen enough of war. In the days that followed, he helped rebuild what could be restored. The elves worked tirelessly, their hands deft and their hearts steadfast. Ships were repaired, walls mended, gardens replanted along the terraces overlooking the sea. Yet even in this labor, a quiet unease lingered among them. Though Gaurhir's form had been destroyed, the shadow of his malice had not wholly faded. Strange dreams troubled many, whispers of a dark shape moving beneath the waters, and a voice that promised vengeance. One night, unable to sleep, Arthendir climbed again to the beacon. The stars shone bright, and the sea lay calm beneath them. He held the ring before him, its twin serpents glinting faintly in the starlight. "Barahir," he murmured. "Beren Dior, if your spirits yet watch, guide me. For I am lost between two worlds, of men and elves alike, and I know not what my duty now must be." A voice answered, not in words, but in the sighing of the wind. It carried the scent of distant rain and the murmur of far waters. Arthendir closed his eyes, and for an instant he felt the presence of something vast and kind, as though the sea itself listened. Then a faint glow stirred in the ring, and warmth spread through his palm. When he looked again, he saw upon the far horizon a light, not of stars nor of ships, but a single bright flame, like a lantern carried upon the waves. It moved slowly westward until it vanished into the dawn. He descended then, his heart steadied. Whatever the meaning of that vision, he knew now what must be done. The ring could not remain in Middle-earth. It was a relic of oaths too ancient, a bond that had drawn both blessing and doom upon his house. If Gaurhir's spirit endured, it would seek it again. Only by sending it beyond the reach of shadow could its purpose be fulfilled. When morning came, he went to Erelor and spoke his resolve. "I will sail west," he said. "Not to the Undying Lands, for that fate is not given to my kind, but to the outer isles where few dare go. There I shall cast this ring into the sea, to rest in the depths beyond Morgoth's memory." Erelor regarded him long, his gaze grave and searching. "Few of men have looked upon Amen and lived. But if your heart bids you take this burden upon the waves, I will not hinder you. A ship shall be made ready, and I will give you a crew loyal and brave." "None," Arthendir said quietly. "This is my charge alone. My kindred's oath began with one man. Let it end with one." So it was that a small grey ship was built for him, swift and light, its sails woven with silver thread. Upon its prow was carved the image of two serpents entwined, their eyes of green glass like those of the ring. The elves named it Eorboron, the faith of the sea. On the eve of his departure, they gathered upon the quay. Eorla placed his hand upon Arthendir's shoulder and said, "Should you not return, know this. Your name will be remembered in the songs of the havens, and the friendship of the Eldar and Edain shall not fade." Arthendir bowed. "If that be so, then the blood of my ancestors has not been shed in vain." As the sun set, he stepped aboard. The wind caught the sail, and the ship glided from the harbor, its wake shimmering in the twilight. The elves sang a farewell upon the shore, a song of starlight and home, and their voices carried far across the sea. Night deepened, and the stars wheeled above. Arthendir stood at the helm, the ring gleaming faintly in his hand. He thought of Lineth, of her courage and grace, and of the light that had not dimmed even as the wave rose. Perhaps she was not lost, but dwelling now in the halls beyond the sea, her song joined with those who had gone before. As dawn neared, he reached the place where the waters turned dark and fathomless, far beyond sight of land. The wind stilled. Only the murmur of the deep remained. He drew the ring once more into the light and looked upon it for the last time. "Be at peace," he said softly. "May the friendship you bore outlast the folly of those who wielded you. May the blood of the ancestors find rest." Then he cast it into the sea. The ring sank swiftly, its light dimming until it vanished beneath the waves. For a heartbeat, all was still. Then the sea stirred, glowing faintly where it had fallen. A single green flame rose, flickered, and was gone. Arthendir bowed his head, tears mingling with the spray. The ship turned slowly eastward, and the wind came again, gentle and cool. Behind him, the horizon blazed with dawn. Thus ended the last quest of Barahir's blood, not in glory, but in peace hard won. And though Arthendir's fate is not told in the songs of later ages, the elves of the havens say that when the sea is calm and the stars are mirrored deep upon the water, a faint green glimmer may yet be seen in the west, where the blood of the ancestors sleeps. Long years passed, and the world changed. The seas withdrew, mountains fell, and the lands of Beleriand were swallowed by the deep. Yet in the west, where the waves whisper to the stars, the name of Arthendir lingered still among the elves who kept the havens of Sirion. Some said his ship, Eorboron, was seen at times in the mists, sailing beneath starlight, a lone figure at its helm. Others claimed the sea itself had taken him as its own, bearing his spirit into the keeping of Ulmo, Lord of Waters. But the tale of the ring was not ended, for nothing wrought in faith and sorrow is ever wholly lost. Deep in the cold dark of the sea it lay, the twin serpents clasped about their crown of golden flowers. Ages passed, storms raged and calmed, and the bones of empires turned to dust. Yet the ring endured, guarded by the silence of the abyss. Then, one night, long after the breaking of Beleriand, a strange light glowed beneath the waters off the western shores. The mariners of Círdan, who still sailed the coasts of Middle-earth, saw the sea burn with green fire. From that place, they recovered an ancient wreck, a ship of grey wood, its sails long rotted, its timbers worn smooth as bone. Upon its deck lay a single helm, wrought with silver leaves, and beside it a sword hilt of Númenórean make. When they lifted the helm, something fell from within, a small shape, crusted with salt and thyme. They took it up, and when the crust was broken, there gleamed the ring of Barahir, untouched by decay, its emerald eyes bright as ever. So the ring returned to shore once more, though none could tell how. Some said Ulmo himself had raised it from the deep. Others whispered that Arthendir's spirit had guided it home, fulfilling his oath. The mariners brought it to the master of the havens, who in those days was an elf named Aerandir, kin to Erelor. He gazed long upon the ring and said, "It should not remain here, for its tale is bound to the race of men. It was given in faith to Barahir's house, and in faith it must be restored." Thus, after long counsel, they sent word eastward to Númenor, for the blood of Beor yet flowed in the veins of its kings. In the year of the Great Peace, a ship bearing the ring set sail across the sea, carrying with it the last relic of Belarion's oaths. When it came at last to the Isle of Kings, it was delivered to the court of Tar Elendel, fourth ruler of Númenor. The king received it with wonder, for the songs of Beren and Luthien were still sung in those days, and all the houses of men revered their memory. Tar Elendel laid the ring before him upon a cloth of white, and all who looked upon it felt a stirring in their hearts, as though the valor of ancient days had awakened again. "It is a sign," said the king, "that the faith between elf and man endures. Though the world has changed, the bond of that oath shall not be broken." So the ring passed into the keeping of Númenor, held in reverence by its rulers and their kin. It became a token not of war, but of heritage, a remembrance of the time when men had stood beside the Eldar in the light of the elder days. And for many generations, peace reigned upon the isle, and the ring shone in the hall of Armenelos beneath banners of silver and blue. Yet peace, as ever, cannot endure forever in the hearts of men. Centuries later, when pride and longing began to darken Númenor, the ring was almost forgotten. Its tale became the matter of lore-masters, its meaning dimmed amid the growing splendor of the king's courts. But one among the faithful, a woman named Elentari, daughter of a mariner of Andunia, found it again in the archives. She was wise and gentle, yet restless of spirit, and her heart yearned for the lands beyond the sunset, the lands forbidden to mortal feet. She would often gaze upon the ring and wonder at its power. "It was wrought from friendship," she said to her father, "and friendship alone could save us now, if our people would but remember." Her father smiled sadly. "Perhaps, but men forget more swiftly than the sea forgets a stone." In those days, whispers grew that the kings sought dominion over death itself. The Valar's counsel was spurned, and the faithful were persecuted. The ring of Barahir, once displayed in pride, was hidden for fear it would be defiled or lost. Elentari took it secretly into her keeping, believing it might yet serve a purpose in the darkening times. Years passed, and Sauron the Deceiver came to Númenor, poisoning the hearts of the proud. The faithful fled in secret to the western coasts, awaiting the doom they could not avert. On a night of storm and trembling earth, Elentari stood upon the cliffs of Andunia, the ring in her hand. Lightning tore the sky, and the sea rose higher than any had ever seen. She cried aloud to the Valar, her voice lost amid the thunder. "If there is still mercy for the blood of Beor," she cried, "let this token be saved. Let it bear witness that our hearts did not wholly turn from the light." And she cast the ring into the sea once more. The next morning, Númenor was gone, swallowed by the deep. The world was changed, and the straight road to the west was lost to mortal eyes. But upon the shores of Middle-earth, far to the east, fishermen of Lindon found a strange thing among the wreckage that the waves had carried. A silver ring shaped like twin serpents, their eyes green as glass. Círdan's people took it in, marveling at its endurance, and they remembered the tales of old. They brought it before Gil-galad, the high king of the Noldor, who looked upon it with wonder and sorrow. "This is the ring of Barahir," he said. "Twice has it been lost to the sea, and twice restored. Perhaps it cannot be unmade, for faith such as this lies beyond the reach of ruin." He sent it then to the new kingdom of Arnor, where the descendants of Elros ruled. There it was given into the hands of Valandil, son of Isildur, who took it as a symbol of his house. Thus the ring returned at last to the blood of its makers, passing through ages untold to the kings of men. And in time, when the line of Númenor was broken and only the Dunedain of the north remained, the ring yet shone upon the hand of their chieftains, through Orenath, through Arathorn, until it came at last to Aragorn, son of Arathorn, the last of that ancient line. But that tale belongs to another age. As for the sea, it kept its silence, though sometimes, when the moon lay upon the waves, a green light shimmered far out upon the western rim. The elves said it was the spirit of Arthendir, still guarding the path between the worlds of elf and man, keeping watch over the oath that neither death nor shadow could destroy. And so ended the story of the blood of the ancestors, a tale not of thrones or crowns, but of faith kept through the long ages of the world. For though kingdoms may fall and stars fade, oaths sworn in friendship outlast them all. In the twilight of the Second Age, when the power of Númenor had been swallowed by the sea, and Middle-earth lay trembling before the shadow of Sauron, the ring of Barahir gleamed once more beneath mortal stars. It had passed into the hands of the Dunedain of the north, those grim and wandering heirs of lost kingship who kept watch over the fading world. From father to son it was given, not as a jewel of wealth, but as a pledge, a memory of light preserved amid gathering dusk. The years lengthened, and the glory of the Eldar waned. Gil-galad fell in war, Elendil beside him, and though the Dark Lord was overthrown, his spirit fled beyond death. The ring survived even that ruin, for Isildur bore it from the fires of battle, treasuring it as a relic of friendship older than his house. In the scrolls of his heirs it was written that he said, "The faith of the Edain is not lost while the ring of Barahir yet endures." But the hearts of men are troubled by time, and memory grows dim. As centuries passed, Arnor broke into 3 kingdoms, and the Dunedain became few. Still, the ring remained with their chieftains, a silent witness to their endurance. It glowed faintly in moonlight, and it was said that when a true heir of the West bore it, a soft warmth awoke beneath its silver coils, like the touch of distant song. So the ages turned. The ring passed through the hands of many, of Valandil, who rebuilt Anúminas after the fall of Sauron, of Orenath, first of the chieftains, of Arador, who died beneath the claws of trolls, and of his son Arathorn, who wed the fair Gilraen of the north. To each it brought both burden and blessing, for wherever the ring went, the shadow followed, and yet so too did hope. It was in Arathorn's day that the Dunedain grew few indeed. Their halls stood empty, their riders scattered through the wild. The glory of Númenor was long forgotten by all but scholars and dreamers. Yet in a small hidden valley of Eriador, under the watch of Elrond half-elven, the blood of the West yet endured. There was born Aragorn, last of the line, and with his naming came the renewal of the ancient ring's light. When he was but a child, Elrond took the ring from his mother's hands and spoke words of foresight. "This shall be the token of your house until the ending of days. Through sorrow and exile it has passed, and in you its promise may yet find fulfillment. Thus the ring, born of friendship between elf and man, came again into the keeping of both. Elrond's people tended it, polishing its silver until the serpents gleamed, their emerald eyes bright as spring leaves after rain. The boy would gaze upon it often, wondering at its strange beauty, though he knew little of its tale. Years rolled onward, and when Aragorn came of age, Elrond revealed to him both his true name and his heritage. He placed the ring in his hand and said, "This was wrought in Beleriand before the fall of the world. It is the symbol of your line, and of the oath sworn by Finrod Felagund to Barahir the Faithful. Keep it, and remember always that friendship and faith are mightier than any sword." From that day forth, Aragorn bore it wherever he went. Through wild and shadow he wandered, a captain without kingdom, yet never without hope. And many who met him, elf, dwarf, or man, felt that the past lived again in his gaze, that some ancient valor stirred within him. Yet this is not his tale, but the ring's, and how its memory shaped the fate of all who bore it. For though the ring was a relic of light, it carried also the echo of sacrifice. Each bearer was marked, not only by duty, but by loss. Arthendir's spirit was said to linger still in the western mists, and some whispered that he guarded the ring's path across the ages, unseen but watchful. At times, in dreams, Aragorn beheld a figure standing upon a grey shore, the sea rising about his feet, a sword in hand and the wind in his dark hair. And though the face was half veiled, he knew it for the ancestor whose courage had preserved this token from oblivion. It was in those days that the shadow stirred once more in the east. Sauron's power grew again, and his servants sought the heirlooms of the old world, rings of power, relics of the First Age, and all things that bore the mark of defiance. Rumor came to the Dunedain that a dark hand had been seen searching among the ruins of Anúminas, as if seeking some treasure long buried. Then Aragorn took counsel with Elrond, and together they decided that the ring must never fall into the hands of the enemy. So it was bound with a chain of mithril, and hidden close against his heart, unseen by all but those he trusted most. In secret it journeyed with him through the lands of Middle-earth, across the plains of Rohan, through the forests of Mirkwood, and even into the dark passes of Mordor, when he hunted the servants of the Eye. Through every peril it endured. Many times its emeralds caught the faint glint of moonlight amid the darkness, and in those moments Aragorn took heart. It reminded him not only of his duty, but of the friendship that once united the children of Ilúvatar in common cause. When at last he came to Lothlórien, weary and worn, the Lady Galadriel looked upon the ring and smiled. "This I know," she said, her voice soft as wind in the leaves. "It was once given in love and faith between our kindred and yours. The shadow of Morgoth could not destroy it, nor the pride of men, nor the wrath of the sea. Such things endure, while hope endures." And she blessed him, saying, "May the bond that this ring once sealed be renewed in you, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the hour comes when both elf and man must choose their fate anew." Years later, upon the fields of the Pelennor, when the hosts of Mordor darkened the sky, Aragorn bore that ring still, hidden beneath his armor. It gleamed faintly when he raised his sword against the shadow, and those who fought beside him said that for an instant a green light shone about his hand, as though the strength of ages answered his call. After the War of the Ring, when peace returned and the white tree blossomed in Minas Tirith, the Ring of Barahir was set within the treasury of the kings. But Aragorn often wore it upon his hand, in remembrance of those who had come before, of Beren and Luthien, of Arthendir and Lineth, of all who had bled to preserve faith between elf and man. So it endured into the Fourth Age, still gleaming with its quiet light, though fewer and fewer remembered the story of its making. Yet sometimes, when the sea wind swept through the White City and the stars were bright above the mountains, Aragorn would stand upon the walls and look westward. And far across the waves, he thought he saw a shadowed figure upon a ship, its sail silver in the starlight, watching still. Then he would whisper softly, "Your oath is kept, Arthendir. The blood of the ancestors is not forgotten." And the sea, ancient and deep, would murmur in reply. The years of the Fourth Age lengthened into peace. The shadow had passed from Middle-earth, and the kingdoms of men flourished anew. In Minas Tirith, white and gleaming beneath the sun, King Elessar ruled with wisdom and strength. The ring of Barahir shone upon his hand, a living memory of the ancient bond between elf and man. To many it was but an heirloom, yet to Aragorn it was more, a reminder of the oaths that had shaped the world before the dawn of his line. In the quiet hours of night, when the torches burned low and the stars wheeled above the White City, Aragorn would sometimes sit alone in the high tower of Ecthelion. There he would hold the ring to the starlight and watch its emerald eyes catch the fire of the heavens. He thought often of those who had borne it before him, of Arthendir, who had cast it into the sea, of Elentari, who had hurled it from the doomed cliffs of Númenor, of Beren and Luthien, whose love had kindled the very light that now crowned his own house. Arwen would find him there at times, her dark hair unbound, her gaze calm as the moon. "You look upon the past as though it were a burden," she would say. He would smile faintly. "A burden, perhaps. Yet it is also a gift. We are what they made us, Arwen. The ring reminds me that hope is not born from ease, but from endurance." And she would answer, "Then let it remind you also that endurance is not only for battle. Even peace must be tended, or it too will fade." So he listened to her counsel, and under his rule the lands healed. The fields of Gondor grew green again, the rivers ran clear, and in Ithilien the laughter of children replaced the cries of war. The northern kingdom, Arnor, was restored as well, its empty towers rebuilt beneath the silver banner of the king. Yet though peace endured, the sea ever called, that low, eternal whisper heard by all of Númenor's blood. When Aragorn's reign had passed 100 years, and his hair was touched with silver, a restlessness came upon him. He would ride often to the shores of Belfalas, standing where the waves broke white upon the stones. Faramir, his old friend, once found him there, gazing westward into the setting sun. "You look as one who waits for tidings," said the steward. Aragorn smiled. "Perhaps I do. The world grows quiet, and yet I feel the pull of something far older than these lands, the call of the West that never fades from our kind. Tell me, Faramir, do you ever wonder what lies beyond the shadow of the sea?" Faramir bowed his head. "I wonder, but I do not seek. My place is here until the end, and mine also," said the king softly. "Yet there are nights when I dream of the sea's edge, and a ship gliding through mist, and a voice calling my name, a voice I think I have heard before." Faramir laid a hand upon his arm. "Perhaps it is the memory of your ancestors that stirs. The blood of Númenor remembers even what the mind forgets." Aragorn nodded, yet his gaze did not leave the horizon. "The sea forgets nothing," he murmured. That night he returned to Minas Tirith and climbed again to the high tower. The ring of Barahir shone upon his hand, green as a leaf in spring, as he looked upon it. a thought came to him, clear as the sound of a distant harp. He remembered the old tales, the deeds of Arthendair and Linneth, the ring's passage through sea and shadow, and he wondered if its journey was truly complete. That winter, strange dreams began to visit him. In them he saw a shore of silver sand, and upon it stood a tall figure clad in grey, a sword at his side. The man raised his hand, and from his finger gleamed the twin serpents of the ring, though Aragorn knew that he himself still wore it. The figure spoke no word, yet the message was clear as dawn. The oath is not yet ended. 3 nights the dream returned. On the 4th, Aragorn woke before dawn, and went down to the gardens where Arwen often walked. She found him there, standing among the withered roses, his face pale in the starlight. "You are troubled," she said. "I have been called," he answered, "by one who came before me. The ring has not yet found rest. There is something unfinished, a promise left unfulfilled." Arwen took his hand in hers. "If you go seeking it, you will not return." He met her gaze, and there was no fear in him, only peace. "All journeys end, my beloved. Mine has been long delayed, but I will not go as a king in pride. I will go as Arthendair went, as a keeper of faith." So in the following spring, when the first blossoms opened upon the white tree, Aragorn laid down his crown. He called his son Eldarion to him, and placed the ring of Borahir upon his hand. "This is the token of your house," he said. "Keep it close, and remember that kingship is not born of might, but of mercy. I go now to fulfill an oath older than either of us. Rule wisely, my son, and the light of our fathers will not fade." Then he bade farewell to Arwen, and together they walked to the harbour of Dol Amroth. There a single ship awaited, small and grey, its sails unstained by age. None could say whence it had come, only that it bore upon its prow the image of 2 serpents intertwined. The wind was gentle, the sea calm. Arwen's tears fell upon the deck as she kissed him one last time. "Beyond the sea, no road leads back," she whispered. "I know," he said softly, "but where I go I shall not be alone." Then he took her hand, pressed it to his heart, and stepped aboard. The ship glided from the shore, its sail catching the light of the rising sun. Those who watched from the cliffs said that it passed into a bank of silver mist and was seen no more. In the years that followed, Eldarion ruled well, and the realm of men prospered. The ring of Borahir remained upon his hand, though its light grew dimmer, as if the spirit bound to it had finally found rest. Yet sometimes, when the tide was high and the west wind strong, sailors glimpsed a pale ship upon the horizon, its sail glowing faintly in the dusk. They said it was the king returned to the place of his forefathers, seeking the land beyond the world's edge, where the sea meets the light everlasting, and the blood of the ancestors sleeps, and thus the tale of the ring, and of all who bore it, came full circle, from the fires of Beleriand to the quiet shores of the west. It was a story not of conquest, but of remembrance, not of crowns, but of promises kept. For though time may veil all things, and the world itself may change, the light born of friendship and faith endures beyond even the end of days. And when the stars shone bright over the sea of Belegire, those who listened closely said they could still hear a voice upon the wind, calm and resolute, carrying the same words that had begun the tale so long ago. By this bond, the faith of the Eldar and the Edain shall not fail. In the long twilight of the Fourth Age, when the memory of war had faded into legend, the White City stood bright and strong upon the bones of the mountains. Eldarion, son of Elisar and Arwen, ruled wisely from the high throne of Gondor. Peace dwelt in the lands of men, and the scars of shadow were healed. Yet though the yores were fair, the sea wind still carried whispers, of oaths once sworn, of rings once lost and found again, and of the line of kings who bore them. The ring of Barahir remained with Eldarion, gleaming faintly on his hand, as it had on his father's. But to him it was no longer only a relic. It was a living symbol, its green eyes flickering like starlight through leaves. He could feel, at times, a pulse within it, soft and slow, as though it remembered. When the night was clear, and the moon shone upon the towers of Minas Tirith, Eldarion would stand upon the walls and gaze westward, toward the unseen shores, wondering what secret purpose the ring still held. For though the world had changed, the oaths of the First Age were not wholly forgotten. The elves had long departed, sailing into the west where no mortal might follow, yet echoes of their songs still lingered among the high places. It was said that on nights when the sea was calm and the stars burned bright, one could hear faint music rising from the depths, the echo of ancient friendship, undimmed by time. Eldarion's reign was one of plenty. The fields of Lebanon bore rich harvests, and in Ithilien, the gardens of Faramir's line bloomed brighter than ever. The Dunedain of the north returned to their old strength, and trade passed freely between the realms. The peoples of Middle-earth, weary of war, turned their hearts toward peace. Yet even peace can grow heavy, for the hearts of men are restless. It began with dreams. Eldarion dreamed of a green light flickering beneath the waves, and of a voice calling him by name, soft, distant, yet filled with longing. Sometimes he saw the image of a tall figure in grey standing upon a shore of silver sand, holding a ring that gleamed like starlight on the sea. Each time he awoke, the voice lingered in his ears, whispering, "The bond endures." Troubled, he sought the counsel of his mother, Arwen Undomiel, who still lived, though her beauty had grown grave and distant as winter's twilight. "These dreams are not of the waking world," she said softly. "The sea does not speak without purpose. Perhaps the spirit of the West calls to you, as it once called to your father." "But why me?" Eldarion asked. "The ring's work is done. The kingdoms are at peace." "Peace is not the end of all things," Arwen answered. "There is always one last road left to walk. You are of both kindreds, of men and of the Eldar's grace. The bond that was sealed in ancient days may yet await its final rest." Eldarion bowed his head. "Then I will follow where the dream leads." So it came to pass that he gathered a small company, knights of Gondor, swift and faithful, and rode westward across the lands of Lebanon to the shores of Belfalas. There the sea met the land in high white cliffs, and the waves thundered far below. Upon one such height stood the old watchtower of Dolbelas, long abandoned since the War of the Ring. Eldarion made his camp there, and for many nights he watched the horizon, hoping for some sign. On the seventh night, as the moon rose and the wind fell still, a light appeared far out upon the waters, a pale, flickering gleam, green as the heart of an emerald. It drifted closer, yet no ship could be seen. The knights murmured in awe, but Eldarion's heart quickened with strange certainty. "The sea remembers," he said. "Prepare a boat." Though they pleaded with him not to go, he would not be swayed. Alone he took a small craft and rowed into the dark, following the light that shimmered upon the waves. It led him far from the shore, into waters deep and silent. There it slowed, until it seemed to hover above a place where the sea glowed faintly beneath the surface, a circle of pale fire turning slow and bright. Then Eldarion felt it, a tug upon his hand, gentle yet firm, as if unseen fingers drew him downward. The ring of Barahir blazed suddenly, its serpents burning with living flame. A voice echoed through the water, not heard by the ear, but felt within his heart. Faith endures beyond the world. Come, heir of the blood, the bond awaits its last keeper. Before he could cry out, the sea opened like glass beneath him, and he was drawn into its depths. Down he fell, through blue and green, past shoals of silver fish and forests of coral. The light of the ring guided him, brighter than the sun through water. At last he came to rest upon a floor of white sand, where stood a figure robed in grey, his face calm and timeless. "Do not fear," said the stranger. His voice was the voice of the sea itself. "I am Ulmo, Lord of Waters, who remembers the oaths of old. Long have I watched this token and those who bore it. Now its journey draws to an end." Eldarion knelt before him, awe mingled with wonder. "Then the ring's purpose is fulfilled?" "Not fulfilled," said Ulmo, "but transformed. Its faith was bound to the world that was. Yet the bond between elf and man was made that both might endure, even as the ages turn. You, son of Elisar, are the bridge between what was and what shall be. Will you bear it beyond the circles of this world, into the light where no shadow falls?" Eldarion looked upon the ring. It pulsed with life, yet he felt no fear. "If it is my fate, I will bear it." Ulmo inclined his head, and the sea stirred around them. "Then the oath is fulfilled, and the blood of the ancestors finds peace." The waters rose in a whirl of light, and Eldarion felt himself lifted upward, borne upon a current warm and swift. The world grew distant, the waves fading into a silver mist. He heard a song, faint at first, then swelling like the tide, and within it were many voices: Beren and Luthien, Arthendir and Lineth, Elentari and Elisar. All who had kept the faith sang together, their harmony brighter than any dawn. When the light cleared, the watchers upon the cliffs saw only calm sea beneath the moon. Eldarion's boat drifted empty upon the waves, the ring of Barahir gone with him. In Gondor, when word reached the White City, Arwen stood long upon her balcony, her eyes upon the west. A tear like crystal fell upon her hand, yet she smiled, for she knew that her son had gone where no shadow could follow. And so the sea kept its silence, though sometimes, in the farthest west, sailors spoke of a green star rising over the horizon, bright and unwavering, a sign of peace eternal. Thus ended the long tale of the blood of the ancestors. From the faith of the first oath to the voyage of the last king, it was a story woven not of crowns, but of courage, of promises made and kept through the ruin of worlds. And though the ages would turn and men forget, still the sea would remember, whispering its song to those who dared listen. By this bond, the faith of the Eldar and the Edain shall not fail. After Eldarion's passing into the west, silence lay heavy upon the world. The reign of his house endured for many generations, and yet something of wonder departed with him. The Eldar had gone beyond the reach of mortal sight, the dwarves had retreated deep into their halls of stone, and even the Ents wandered no more. The Fourth Age waned into twilight, and men stood alone beneath the stars. Yet though the world changed, memory lingered, faint as the scent of spring on a winter wind. The bards of Gondor still sang of the ring of Barahir, of Beren and Luthien, of Arthendir and Lineth, and of Eldarion, who vanished into the western sea. These songs were taught to children, though few believed they told of truth. In time, they became stories, and stories became myth. Still, in the high tower of the kings, a green flame burned upon a silver lamp, a symbol of the faith that had outlasted empires. It was in that age of forgetting that the world began once more to stir. Strange lights were seen upon the western horizon, faint at first, then growing brighter with each century. Mariners of the southern coasts, bold and reckless, spoke of green fire in the waves and the sound of distant horns borne upon the wind. Most dismissed these tales as madness, yet one among them believed. His name was Erendur, a shipwright of Dol Amroth, whose blood traced faintly to the sea kings of old. He was a tall man, with eyes the color of rain-washed stone, and though the world around him spoke of progress and peace, his heart belonged to the past. He loved the sea not for trade or glory, but for its secrets, for the memory it carried in every wave. One night, as he walked alone upon the shore, he beheld a glimmer far out upon the waters, a steady, emerald light, pulsing softly like the beat of a heart, the same light that had haunted the dreams of kings and poets for ages untold. Erendur stood transfixed. "The sea remembers," he murmured, repeating the words of old songs. "Perhaps the blood of the ancestors stirs once more." He returned the next day with his vessel, a slender ship he had built with his own hands, named Silliver, Foam Jewel. It was swift and strong, wrought of silvered wood and bound with mithril nails. With him went none, for none would heed his calling. Alone, he set his sail to the west. For many days and nights he journeyed, guided only by the star of Eärendil and the green flame that burned ever before him. The sea grew strange and deep, filled with murmurs and sighs, as if unseen spirits moved beneath the surface. At times he thought he heard music, faint, fair, and full of sorrow. Then, on the 12th night, a mist rose from the sea, silver and cold. Through it, Erendur glimpsed shapes that seemed carved of moonlight, towers half veiled by foam, and cliffs that glowed with their own inner light. At the heart of that vision burned the green fire, brighter now, as though welcoming him. He dropped anchor and gazed into the depths below. There, upon a bed of white sand, he saw it, the ring of Barahur, lying unspoiled despite the weight of ages. Its serpents shone with life, and its crown of golden flowers shimmered as if kissed by sunlight. Erendur reached into the water, but as his fingers neared, the sea itself rose to meet him, forming a hand of clear water that cupped the ring. From its depths came a voice, low and vast, echoing through his soul. "Why do you seek what was never lost?" Erendur's heart trembled. "Because the sea calls me by name. Because the world has forgotten what faith once was," the voice answered, soft as a sigh, yet strong as the tide. "Faith is not forgotten while the sea endures. You are of their blood, child of men. Do you wish to bear again the burden of the bond?" Erendur bowed his head. "If it is mine to bear, I will take it, though it lead me beyond the world's edge." The sea hand opened, and the ring rose upon a pillar of light. It drifted to his palm, warm and alive. The moment it touched his skin, visions flooded his mind. The battle at Tarn Eluin, the fall of Númenor, the coronation of Elisar, and the final voyage of Eldarion. He saw the faces of all who had kept the oath, and in each shone the same light, not of victory, but of steadfast love. When the visions faded, the mist began to lift, revealing not the open sea, but a vast expanse of calm water glowing with dawn. Upon its horizon lay a shadowed land, distant yet real. "Go," said the voice of the sea. carry the memory of what was, for the world of men must learn again the cost of hope. Eärendil set his sail toward the light. The voyage that followed was long and perilous, though he marked it, not by days but by dreams. He saw great creatures moving beneath his ship, older than the world of men. He saw islands rising and sinking with the tide, their shores strewn with the remnants of ages lost. Through it all the ring guided him, shining steadily. At last he came upon a coast unknown to any map, green and wild, untouched by the hand of man. Rivers glittered like silver threads through forests vast and unbroken. Mountains crowned with snow loomed in the distance, and the air was sweet with the scent of new life. Eärendil stepped ashore, and as his feet touched the sand, he felt the ring grow warm. A voice, faint now, but kind, whispered, "Here the oath finds rest." He built no hall, raised no banner. Instead, he planted a single white tree upon a hill overlooking the sea. Beneath its roots, he buried the ring of Barahir, wrapping it in a cloth of silver, and speaking words that none had uttered in an age. "Sleep, light of faith," he said. "Your task is done, yet your memory shall endure in the heart of the sea." When he had finished, the wind rose, and the branches of the tree stirred, though no storm was near. A faint green gleam spread through its leaves, and its blossoms shone like stars. Eärendil lived out his days upon that hidden shore, a hermit and a keeper of tales. The years passed gently, and the world of men moved on, never knowing what had come to rest beyond their sight. But sometimes, when the wind blew from the west, sailors glimpsed the shimmer of a white coast where no land should be, and they spoke of a tree whose leaves glowed like emerald fire. Thus the ring of Barahir came to its final haven, beneath the roots of the last white tree of the sea. There it lies still, neither lost nor forgotten, but waiting, as all things of faith must wait, for the day when the world is made new, and the light of friendship between elf and man is rekindled once more. And in the sound of the waves, in every age and tongue, the sea still whispers the ancient promise. By this bond, the faith of the Eldar and the Edain shall not fail. In the deepening years of the Fourth Age, when the borders of the world began to quiet, and the memories of the great wars faded into song, the lands of men were no longer shadowed by the looming presence of evil. The great cities of Gondor and Rohan flourished, and the kingdoms of the north saw the rise of a new age of peace. Yet even in these bright days, there remained a silence, a haunting, unspoken absence, felt most keenly by those who carried the blood of Númenor and the old oaths. Eärendil's tale, though few knew it, lingered in the hearts of those who kept the memory of the sea, the ancient lands, and the wisdom of their forefathers. His journey across the waters had been a quiet one, ending in a distant, forgotten shore, where the last seed of Númenor had taken root, and where the ring of Barahir, wrapped in silver cloth, lay buried beneath the boughs of a silent tree. There, in the secret places of the world, the ring rested at last, its purpose fulfilled. Yet, such things as oaths and promises do not die easily, and the world of men, ever restless, was not content to let them sleep. On the edge of the world, in the hidden reaches of the north, there arose a stir among the people of the wild. A small company of rangers, led by a young captain named Meryn, who was of mixed blood, Númenorian on his father's side, and of the old peoples of the north on his mother's, came upon a strange vision one cold autumn night. They had long been tasked with keeping the borders of Arnor, watching for any sign of evil, though none had ventured forth from Angmar for many years. Yet, on this particular night, as the winds howled through the crags of the mountains, Merron saw something that set his heart alight with an ancient fear. It was the flicker of green fire, burning far off upon the horizon, deep beyond the forests of Eriador. Not the warm golden glow of the autumn bonfires that marked the harvest in Bree, but something different, cold, pale, and unsettling, like the light of some long-forgotten star. "Captain," said one of his men, pointing toward the distant glow, "look yonder. The sea. But how could it reach so far inland?" Merron narrowed his eyes. The winds had shifted, carrying with them a scent of salt and brine, mingling strangely with the scent of pine. He turned to his company. "We ride. We follow that light." They mounted their horses, drawing cloaks tight against the biting wind, and set off toward the strange flame. For several days they rode, crossing the rolling hills and the empty plains, following the glimmering light as it flickered brighter with each passing night. The farther they traveled, the more unsettled Merron felt. The stars above grew dim, as though the very heavens held their breath. The land itself seemed to grow silent, and a peculiar hush filled the world, as if the earth was waiting for something. Finally, they reached the borders of a forest, thick with ancient trees whose branches twisted like the gnarled hands of forgotten things. The light grew brighter, illuminating the mist that hung over the forest floor like a heavy veil. Merron led his men through the trees, and soon they came to a clearing. There, standing tall and proud, was a tree unlike any other. It glowed with a strange, emerald light, its leaves shimmering in the moonlight like jewels upon the wind. At its base, a single stone marker stood, weathered by the ages but still bearing the faintest outline of an inscription. An inscription Merron couldn't read. And there, lying at the foot of the tree, was a figure. An old man, his weathered skin dark as the bark of the trees, his face solemn and quiet. His eyes, though closed, seemed to glimmer with a strange fire, like the light that danced around him. "Who is he?" one of the rangers asked softly. Merron knelt beside the man, his heart heavy with a sense of recognition. "He is of the blood of Numenor," Merron said, his voice trembling. "And his spirit has not yet left this world." The man opened his eyes slowly, and Merron recoiled for a moment at the piercing gaze that seemed to look right through him. "You have come," the man said, his voice ancient and soft as the wind through the leaves. The blood of the ancestors stirs once more. "Who are you?" Merron asked, his voice thick with wonder. "What is this place?" The old man slowly raised his hand, gesturing toward the tree. "This is the last seed of Numenor, the last place where the bond between elf and man has not yet faded. Here the ring of Barahir lies, and here the light of the oaths remains." Merron's heart caught in his chest. "The ring?" The old man nodded, and a faint smile crossed his lips. "It was buried long ago, in the last moments before the last king passed into the west. But its purpose was never truly finished. The bond it carried remains, and so long as it lies buried, the oath will not pass away. It was not meant for one man alone to bear. It was always meant to be carried by the blood of Numenor." Merron's hand instinctively reached for his chest, where the symbol of the Rangers rested. His blood burned with a strange sense of duty, as though some ancient call had awakened in his veins. I don't understand." The old man closed his eyes again. "You will. The world is changing once more. A new age begins, and the old bonds must be reforged. You, Merron, are the heir of that blood. You must take the ring." A chill ran down Merron's spine. and though he had never before known such a weight in his life, the old man's words filled him with an undeniable certainty. He could not turn away. The world had always known him as a ranger, a man who wandered through the shadows. But now he felt the stirrings of something greater, something bound to the old promises. "Where is it?" Mairon asked. The old man pointed toward the base of the glowing tree, where the ground seemed to ripple with faint light. "Beneath the roots, where the ring lies." Mairon dropped to his knees and began to dig, the earth giving way beneath his fingers with strange ease, as if the soil itself desired to be uncovered. The deeper he dug, the clearer the glow became. At last, his fingers touched something cold and smooth. He pulled it free. The ring, its emerald serpents gleaming with an otherworldly light. As he held it in his hand, he felt a surge of warmth flood his chest. The air around him hummed with power, and he could feel the faint stirrings of the ancient bond, calling him to something beyond himself. He understood now. This ring was not simply a relic. It was a key to something greater than the blood of Numenor, something greater than even the world of men. He stood, holding the ring in his hand, and the old man's voice came again, faint as the rustling leaves. "The bond must be reforged. You, Mairon, are the bridge. Take it to the west, and where it lies, the hearts of men and elves will beat together once more." With that, the old man's form seemed to dissolve, as though it had never been anything but shadow and light. Mairon stood alone in the clearing, the ring pulsing in his hand. The winds shifted, and the green glow of the tree seemed to dim. It was time. The final journey would begin. Mairon turned toward the west, where the sea whispered its ancient call. The last of Numenor's blood stirred within him, and the weight of the oath pressed upon his shoulders. He knew where he must go. The road had opened before him, and the ring would lead him to the heart of the West, the place where oaths could be renewed, and where the legacy of the Eldar and the Edain would endure, whatever the cost. The road westward was long and lonely. For many weeks, Mairon and his company rode through the wide plains of Gondor, then north and west along the seacoast, where the gulls cried over the cliffs, and the wind bore with it the scent of salt and memory. The ring of Barahir, heavy upon Mairon's hand, shone faintly through his glove, not bright, but alive, pulsing as though it possessed a heart that beat in time with his own. He seldom spoke of what had passed beneath the green tree, yet his men felt the change upon him. His eyes grew distant, his voice quieter, as though part of him already listened to another world. By night, he would sit apart from the campfire, staring out towards the western stars. The others watched in silence, for they feared to break the stillness that seemed to guard him. When at last they came to the White City, they found the great halls of Minas Tirith thronged with merchants and nobles, yet among them few remembered the tales of old. The songs of Beren and Luthien were still sung in the high courts, but the names of Arthendir, Lineth, and the ancient oath were known only to the lore-masters. Still, when Mairon spoke before the steward, he told his tale in full, of the glowing tree and the voice of the ancient man who had charged him to carry the ring into the west. The steward, Hiraval, a man of noble heart and measured counsel, heard him gravely. "It is said that the line of Numenor yet flows through the house of the stewards," he said, "but the sea beyond the world is barred to us. You would seek what no mortal ship has found since Eldarion vanished into the mist." "I would not seek it for glory," Mairon answered, "only to fulfill the promise. The ring calls to the west, and the sea will not be denied." Hiraval studied him long before he replied. "The world has grown smaller. my friend. The old paths are lost, the straight road is closed. But if your purpose is pure, then perhaps the powers will open a way unseen. Go then, and may the blessing of the Vala rest upon your sail." Thus Meryn was granted a ship, slender and white, built in the shipyards of Dol Amroth, kin in craft to those that once sailed under Círdan's hand. He named it Lerwen, the Maiden of Song, for he believed the sea itself would guide its course. From his company, only 3 would follow: Tirion, his oldest companion; Amdril, a quiet scholar who had studied the lore of Númenor; and Míriel, a huntress of Dol Amroth, whose eyes were keen as the falcon's. Together they set sail upon a morning calm and clear, while the people of the harbour watched in silence, for it was said that none who sailed west in search of the lost isles ever returned. The wind filled their sails, and the land of men slipped behind them. For many days they followed the coast, passing the green hills of Anfalas and the silver beaches of Andrast, until at last they turned their prow toward the open sea. The waters grew darker, deeper, and the stars at night seemed brighter, as though drawing nearer to the world. It was then that the ring began to glow more strongly. Its emerald eyes burned with a living flame, and Meryn could feel its pulse even when he slept. Often he dreamed of a voice calling him from far away, of white shores beneath starlight, and of a figure clad in grey waiting beside a silver tree. On the 10th night, a storm rose without warning. The winds howled like wolves, and the sea rose in black walls about them. Lightning flashed, and in the heart of the storm, Meryn thought he saw shapes, vast and shadowed, moving beneath the waves like spirits of the deep. "Hold the mast," he cried, his voice lost to the gale. "Trust the wind. It does not seek to harm us." But the storm did not heed him. The ship was lifted high, then cast down into a valley of foam. Tirion was thrown to the deck, his arm broken, while Míriel clung to the tiller, her hair whipping in the wind. Amid the fury, Amdril shouted above the thunder, "The sea tests you, Meryn! Cast away the ring if you would live!" But Meryn only gripped it tighter. "No, it is not death that calls us." Then, through the storm's roar, a new sound rose, deep and solemn, like a horn blown from the end of the world. The waves faltered, the wind fell still, and before them the sea opened into calm. The clouds parted, and they beheld a vast expanse of shining water stretching endlessly westward, silver beneath the stars. Upon the horizon, faint yet clear, there burned a green light. "The way is open," Meryn said softly. "We are called." They sailed onward into that strange calm. The stars above were no longer those of Middle-earth. They seemed closer, larger, their light pure and unwavering. A sweet fragrance filled the air, like blossoms from unseen gardens. Time itself seemed to sleep. On the 5th day of that voyage, they came upon a land, white shores gleaming beneath pale dawn. Mountains rose beyond the coast, clothed in forests of silver green. Rivers flowed like glass, and in the distance, upon a high hill, they saw a single tree shining with golden bloom. Meryn felt his breath catch. "The hidden land," he whispered. "We have found it." They brought the ship to shore and stepped upon the sand. It was warm, as though it remembered sunlight. No voice of man or bird disturbed the stillness, yet the place was not empty. It was alive with presence, a peace so deep that the air itself seemed to sing. Then from the hill came a figure robed in grey, his hair like silver and his eyes as deep as the sea. In his hand he bore a staff of white wood, and at his throat hung a shell carved with the rune of Ulmo. "Welcome, child of the wandering blood," said the figure. "Long has your kind been absent from these shores. Few indeed have walked this road since the world was bent." Maron bowed low. "I come bearing the ring of Barahir to fulfill the oath of the Eldar and the Eden." The figure smiled faintly. "The oath was fulfilled long ago, yet its memory remains. The powers do not forget faith, nor do they cast aside those who remember. You have crossed the sea not to restore the bond, but to bear witness to it." Maron looked down at the ring, which now shone as though filled with sunlight. "Then my journey is done?" The grey figure shook his head. "No journey truly ends. The ring must rest here, where it was first blessed. Lay it at the root of the golden tree, and its light shall mingle with the light of the west forever." So Maron climbed the hill, and before the golden tree he knelt. The earth was soft beneath his hands, and as he placed the ring upon the ground, a warmth spread through him like the breath of dawn. The tree's roots shimmered, curling gently around the ring, and a single leaf fell, glowing with green fire. When he turned, the figure was gone, and his companions stood silent, awed by what they had seen. The air around them shimmered like morning mist, and the sea beyond gleamed brighter than the sun. "We should return," Mirael whispered. Maron nodded. "Yes, the bond is kept. Let us bear the memory home." They sailed east again, though no storm hindered them now. The sea bore them gently, as though blessing their return. But when at last they reached Middle-earth, no one believed their tale. The world had moved on, and the songs of the First Age were only echoes. Still, the rangers of the north kept a secret sign. 2 serpents entwined, their eyes of green. And when the wind blew westward, Maeren would close his eyes and listen, for in the murmur of the sea he could hear it still. By this bond, the faith of the Eldar and the Aedian shall not fail. The years turned quietly after Maeren's voyage, and the ages of the world drifted on like slow tides beneath an unchanging sky. The kingdoms of men grew strong once more, spreading across plains and mountains that had long lain empty. New cities rose upon the ruins of the old, white towers gleaming beneath the sun, and the tongues of the west filled the lands where once elves had walked. Yet the sea still whispered its endless song, and now and then its waves carried with them the faint echo of a light that never wholly faded. Maeren and his companions had returned from the west, but they were changed. Their faces bore a quiet grace, and their eyes held the faraway gleam of starlight. They spoke little of what they had seen, though many questioned them. Some said they had found Valinor itself, others that they had sailed into the land of dreams. But Maeren knew what words could not tell, that faith, once given, never dies. It only takes new form, as the sea changes its face, but keeps its heart forever. In his later years, Maeren settled once more in the north, among the rangers who still guarded the wild places of Arna. They called him the last seafarer, for after his voyage, none dared again to sail beyond sight of land. He dwelt in a small house, built of stone, beside the Lune, where the river met the sea, and there he taught those who came after him. He spoke to them not of war, nor of the glory of kings, but of endurance, of keeping faith when the world grows quiet and forgetful. When the moon was full, he would walk alone along the shore. His cloak would catch the silver light, and those who watched from afar said that sometimes a pale green glow surrounded him, soft as a dream. And when storms came, as storms always do, he would stand by the waves with his hand upon his heart, as though greeting an old friend. It was on such a night many years after his return, that a stranger came to him. The storm had passed, and the stars shone bright, mirrored upon the dark water. The stranger was cloaked in grey, his face hidden, and his step made no sound upon the stones. "Maeron of the Dunedain," he said, and his voice carried the weight of ages. "You kept the faith, as was foretold. Yet one thing remains undone." Maeron turned and faced him. "Who are you, traveller, that speaks as one who knows my heart?" The stranger drew back his hood. His hair was white as foam, his eyes deep as the sea. "I am but a messenger of those who dwell beyond the sunset," he said. "The powers have not forgotten your courage. The ring you bore is at peace, yet the memory of it must endure, lest the world fall again into shadow." Maeron bowed his head. "Then tell me what I must do." "Write its tale," said the stranger. "Speak not of glory, nor of doom, but of the bond that joined elf and man, and how it endured through the ruin of worlds. Let it be told in the speech of your people that even those who come after the end of all kingdoms may remember that light once lived in their blood." When Maeron looked up, the stranger was gone, and only the whisper of the tide remained. So he set to work. In the quiet of his hall he took quill and parchment, and began to write. Though his hand trembled, and his sight was dim, he wrote of Barahir, and of Finrod's oath, of Arthendir's courage, and Lineth's sorrow, of the sea that remembered, and the flame that never died. He wrote until the dawn, and when the first light touched the sea, he laid down his pen. His final words were these: "Faith may wander, but it is never lost, for the sea holds all things that are true, and the heart of man, though mortal, can outlast even time itself." When his work was done, Maeron walked once more to the shore. The wind was soft, and the waves gentle as they touched his feet. The morning star still shone in the west, bright and unwavering. He closed his eyes and listened, and in the murmur of the tide he thought he heard voices, distant and fair, like a song remembered from childhood. They were calling his name. He smiled, and the years seemed to fall from him like leaves from a tree. The air shimmered, the sea brightened, and before the sun had risen fully, Maeron was gone. Only his cloak remained, folded upon the stone, and the sound of the waves echoing softly against the shore. The rangers who came later found his writings, sealed in a chest of cedar. They carried them to the White City, where the lore-masters set them among the chronicles of the kings. In time, his tale passed into legend. The blood of the ancestors, though few believed it more than myth. Yet those who read it felt a stirring in their hearts, as though a long-forgotten song were beginning again. Years turned to centuries, and the kingdoms of men rose and fell. The towers of Gondor stood long, but even they grew silent at last. The world changed, as all things must. Still, in the far north, where the sea broke upon the lonely shores of Forlinden, sailors spoke of strange lights upon the water, green and gold, dancing together like flame upon the waves. They said that sometimes, if one listened closely, the sea would whisper in a voice like a distant harp. By this bond, the faith of the Eldar and the Edain shall not fail. Thus ended the last telling of the Ring of Barahir. Yet the sea does not end, nor the memory of what was sworn in the elder days. The light that sprang from that ancient faith still burns in every heart that dares to hope, in every hand that keeps a promise unbroken, in every friendship that bridges sorrow and loss. And so the world turns, and though the faces of men change, the sea remains, eternal, patient, and remembering. On nights when the moon is full and the stars ride high, the waves glimmer faintly with emerald light. Then it is said that Marin's voice may yet be heard, mingled with the song of all who came before, calling across the ages. Faith is the last flame that no darkness can quench. The bond endures. The wind answers him in sighs and whispers, and the stars shimmer brighter over the sea. And though the kingdoms of men may fall, and even the mountains sink, still the promise abides, that the friendship between the children of Ilúvatar shall not perish, for its roots lie deeper than the world itself. Thus the tale comes to its true end, where endings are only doors to beginnings. The sea keeps its counsel, the stars their vigil, and somewhere beyond the bent world, the ring of Barahir rests beneath the golden tree, its light mingled forever with the dawn. And whenever a child of men looks west and feels longing stir within their heart, that light awakes anew. For faith, like the sea, is endless.